We are constantly reminded that kindness is a virtue, that we should put others' needs before our own, and that generosity is the hallmark of a good person. However, what many fail to recognize is that excessive kindness can become a dangerous trap, one that can lead to emotional, financial, and psychological devastation. In a world where giving doesn't always guarantee receiving, many generous souls find themselves depleted, taken advantage of, and ultimately questioning the very values they hold dear. The reality is that being too kind can indeed put our lives in danger, not necessarily in a physical sense, but certainly in terms of our mental health, personal relationships, and overall life satisfaction. When we examine this phenomenon through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we discover that the ancient wisdom of accepting things as they are and maintaining emotional equilibrium becomes particularly relevant in our modern context of endless giving and receiving. The first devastating consequence of excessive kindness is the development of unrealistic expectations. When we consistently give without asking for much in return, we unconsciously create a mental ledger of what we believe others owe us. The Stoics understood that true contentment comes from accepting reality as it is, not from depending on others' actions to validate our worth or happiness. However, when we pour our hearts, time, and resources into helping others, it becomes nearly impossible to remain completely selfless. Deep down, we expect reciprocity, even if we don't explicitly acknowledge it. This expectation trap becomes particularly cruel because we train the people around us to take our generosity for granted. They become accustomed to having their problems solved, their needs met, and their responsibilities handled by someone else. When we finally need support ourselves, we're met with the harsh reality that others have learned to rely on us, not to support us. The disappointment that follows isn't just about unmet expectations. It's about the fundamental realization that we've created a dynamic where we're valued more for what we provide than for who we are. The second major pitfall is that people begin to expect constant giving from us. Human beings are creatures of habit, naturally adapting to patterns and creating comfort zones around predictable behaviors. When we consistently say yes to requests for help, we inadvertently train others to see us as their personal problem solver. This creates a vicious cycle where our kindness becomes an obligation rather than a choice. The very people we help most often are the least likely to encourage us to prioritize our own needs, because doing so would disrupt their comfortable arrangement. This dynamic is particularly insidious because it operates under the guise of being needed and valued. We might feel important when others constantly turn to us for help, but this importance is conditional and ultimately unsustainable. The tragedy is that we often don't realize how deeply we've embedded ourselves in this pattern until we're completely overwhelmed and resentful. The third consequence strikes at the heart of personal development and self-actualization. When we're constantly focused on others' needs, our own goals and aspirations get pushed aside, sometimes indefinitely. This isn't just about time management, it's about identity erosion. The Stoics emphasize the importance of living according to reason and virtue, which includes maintaining balance and not sacrificing our own well-being for others. When we consistently prioritize others' needs over our own, we may be running from something uncomfortable within ourselves. This avoidance behavior often masks deeper issues. Perhaps we're uncomfortable with solitude, afraid of confronting our own problems, or using helping others as a way to avoid dealing with our own emotional pain. The temporary satisfaction of solving someone else's problems can become an addiction that prevents us from addressing our own unresolved issues. The cruel irony is that by avoiding our own problems through constant helping, we often make those problems worse and create additional stress and resentment. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. Before we can effectively help others, we need to ensure our own emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Just as we wouldn't give away our last piece of bread while starving, we shouldn't give away our emotional energy while running on empty. The metaphor of putting on your own oxygen mask before helping others in an airplane emergency applies perfectly to daily life. The fourth devastating effect is that excessive kindness can actually make others perceive us as weak. this counterintuitive reality stems from the fact that when we never set boundaries or say no, people begin to see us as pushovers rather than genuinely caring individuals. Stoicism teaches us that true strength comes from self-discipline and the ability to make difficult choices, including the choice to decline requests that would harm our well-being. When we consistently agree to everything, we signal to others that we don't value our own time, energy, or priorities. This perception of weakness can actually diminish the respect others have for us, creating a situation where we're simultaneously overworked and undervalued. The moment we start setting boundaries and saying no, people often begin to respect us more, not less. This respect comes from recognizing that we have standards and self-respect, qualities that are essential for healthy relationships. The fifth consequence is perhaps one of the most painful. We begin to attract only people who want something from us, rather than those who want to give. This happens because of the energetic principle that like attracts like. When we consistently operate from a place of depletion and overgiving, we vibrate at a frequency that attracts needy, opportunistic individuals who are drawn to what they can extract from us rather than what they can contribute to our lives. This creates a social circle filled with takers rather than givers, leaving us feeling increasingly isolated and unappreciated. The people who were once considered close friends reveal themselves to be fair-weather companions who only appear when they need something. This realization can be devastating, as it forces us to reconsider not just our relationships, but our entire approach to connecting with others. The sixth danger is the potential for developing addictive behaviors as coping mechanisms. When we consistently give more than we receive, we create a state of chronic emotional and sometimes physical depletion. This scarcity mindset can lead to seeking comfort in substances or behaviors that provide temporary relief, but ultimately compound our problems. Whether it's alcohol, food, gambling, or other compulsive behaviors, the pattern often emerges as a way to cope with the frustration and emptiness that comes from one-sided giving. The people closest to us might notice these changes before we do, and their concern can be our first warning sign. However, our natural response might be defensiveness, especially if we're so caught up in our role as the helper that we can't see our own problems clearly. Recognizing this pattern requires honest self-reflection and the courage to acknowledge that our helping others might be harming ourselves. The seventh consequence is that our kindness may actually make others suspicious of our motives. In a world where genuine altruism is rare, excessive kindness can trigger people's natural suspicion. They may wonder what we're hiding, what we want in return, or what our real agenda might be. This suspicion isn't necessarily unfounded, as many people who engage in excessive helping do have hidden motives, whether they're aware of them or not. The skepticism can be particularly frustrating when our intentions are genuinely pure, but it's important to understand that others' suspicion often comes from their own experiences with manipulation disguised as kindness. The tragedy is that by trying to prove our goodness through excessive giving, we may actually achieve the opposite effect. The eighth and final major consequence is that constant giving can lead us to lose sight of our own identity and values. When we're always adapting to others' needs and solving their problems, we may forget what we actually want and need for ourselves. This identity erosion can leave us feeling empty and purposeless, unsure of who we are outside of our role as the helper. Understanding these dangers is only the first step. The real work lies in developing strategies to protect ourselves while still maintaining our compassionate nature. The key is learning to give from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, and to maintain healthy boundaries that protect our well-being. The first strategy involves developing acute self-awareness, particularly regarding our emotional state. Stoic philosophy emphasizes the importance of self-reflection and understanding our own motivations and feelings. By regularly checking in with ourselves, we can identify when we're giving too much and becoming depleted. The question isn't whether we should help others, but whether we're helping from a place of genuine abundance or from a compulsive need to please. When helping others makes us feel tired, angry, resentful, or used, these emotions are important. signals that we need to reassess our boundaries. Genuine giving should feel energizing and fulfilling, not draining. If we consistently feel negative emotions after helping others, it's time to examine whether we're giving for the right reasons and in sustainable ways. The second crucial strategy is learning to say no without guilt or extensive justification. The word no is perhaps one of the most powerful tools we have for maintaining our well-being, yet many of us struggle to use it effectively. Stoic self-discipline includes the ability to decline requests that would harm our balance or well-being, even when saying no feels uncomfortable. Practicing saying no can be done in front of a mirror or with trusted friends who can help us become more comfortable with setting boundaries. The key is to remember that saying no to one thing means saying yes to something else, usually something that better aligns with our values and priorities. Every time we say no to an unreasonable request, we're saying yes to our own well-being and to the possibility of helping others in more sustainable ways. The third strategy involves establishing and rigorously protecting time and space for ourselves. This isn't just about scheduling self-care activities. It's about treating our personal time with the same respect we'd give to any other important commitment. Whether it's exercise, reading, meditation, or simply sitting quietly with a cup of tea, these moments of self-care are not luxuries but necessities. When we schedule regular time for ourselves and treat it as non-negotiable, we communicate to others that we value our well-being. If someone asks for help during our designated self-care time, we can either say no or offer to help at a different time, making it clear that our availability is limited because we have other commitments. The fourth and final strategy is learning to identify and distance ourselves from energy vampires. These are people who consistently drain our emotional resources without contributing anything positive to our lives. Stoic wisdom teaches us to be discerning about our relationships and to invest our energy in connections that are mutually beneficial. Energy vampires often present themselves as perpetual victims who always have a crisis or problem that needs solving. They're skilled at making us feel guilty for not helping, and often resist any actual solutions to their problems because being helped is less important to them than having someone to complain to. Recognizing these individuals and limiting our interaction with them is essential for maintaining our emotional health. The path forward requires finding balance between compassion and self-preservation. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the best approach to life is often found in the middle ground, and generosity is no exception. When we give too little, we appear selfish and disconnected from others' needs. When we give too much, we deplete ourselves and often enable unhealthy dynamics in our relationships. The goal isn't to become selfish or uncaring, but to become discerning and sustainable in our giving. This means learning to help others from a place of strength rather than weakness, abundance rather than scarcity, and choice rather than compulsion. When we maintain healthy boundaries and prioritize our own well-being, we actually become more effective helpers because we're giving from a place of genuine abundance rather than depletion. True kindness isn't about saying yes to everything or solving everyone's problems. It's about offering genuine support when we're able to do so without harming ourselves, and having the wisdom to know when to step back and let others handle their own challenges. This balanced approach to helping others ultimately benefits everyone involved, creating healthier relationships and more sustainable patterns of support. The journey toward healthy boundaries isn't always easy, especially if we've spent years operating from patterns of excessive giving. It requires courage to disappoint others, wisdom to distinguish between wants and needs, and the self-respect to prioritize our own well-being. However, the alternative, continuing to give beyond our means, leads to resentment, depletion, and ultimately, the inability to help anyone effectively. By embracing the Stoic principles of self-awareness, self-discipline, and balanced action, we can maintain our compassionate nature while protecting our own well-being. We can learn to give generously without giving destructively, to help others without losing ourselves, and to maintain the energy and resources necessary for sustained kindness throughout our lives. The magic word, no, becomes not a rejection of others, but an affirmation of our own worth and a commitment to sustainable compassion. When we learn to use it wisely, we discover that our yes becomes more meaningful, our help more effective, and our relationships more genuine. In the end, the greatest kindness we can offer the world is to be whole, healthy individuals who can give from a place of true abundance rather than desperate need.